Hello, everyone. In this video, I want to explain what divisions are, as we call the countries within our system, what zones are, how they work, how to create them, and why they're needed. First, let me explain what divisions are. Divisions are what we call countries within our system. So, using our system, you can work beyond just one country. You can operate in multiple countries and offer your services there. Switching between countries is done at the top of your system in this dropdown. Click it to see a list of countries, and you can add new ones for your work. Each country, when selected, like Belgium, has its own orders. For example, in Belgium, I have 6 orders now. If I switch to Luxembourg, I have 0 orders there. If I switch to the Netherlands, I have 0 orders. If I switch to France, I have no orders there. If I go back to Belgium, I see 6 orders. Our system divides sections by countries. The system is divided by countries, giving you a view of events in each country where you provide services. In Belgium, I see 6 orders. I can also check the job section and see 3 orders in progress in Belgium. In jobs, we have orders accepted for execution, assigned to taxi companies and drivers, waiting for execution. If I switch to Luxembourg, I see no orders for execution now or soon. In France, I also have none. Back in Belgium, I see 3 orders to be executed soon. Also, companies. Companies are divided by countries. You can view partners, other taxi companies you work with, by each country. In Belgium, I have no partners. In Luxembourg, I have 1. In the Netherlands, none. In France, none. In Spain, none. In Belgium, none. The same applies to company applications. Company applications show incoming applications from other taxi companies or drivers wanting to work with us. They fill out an application form, and you decide if you want to work with them. You see their data, airports they operate in, services, and cars. You decide whether to work with them. The division by countries also applies to vehicles. In each country, we have our own vehicles. In Belgium, we have these. In Luxembourg, these. In the Netherlands, these. In France, different ones. Your fleet can be divided by countries. That's correct because each country may have different cars, classes, settings, and pricing. What remains the same for all countries? It's the list of drivers. No matter the country, the list of drivers stays the same. Drivers are linked to companies, not countries or divisions. Also, the list of users. It is not divided by countries and is always shown fully. Switching countries doesn't change the full list of registered users. Another important point. To see all orders, companies, or vehicles, choose all bookings at the top, not a specific country. In bookings, you'll see orders from all countries, including Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Ireland, France, Portugal, Greece, and so on. Choosing all bookings shows all data, orders, jobs, companies, and vehicles across all countries. See how many there are. That's how divisions work. When adding a new taxi company, specify the division it operates in. Specify the country where the company operates. My taxi operates in the division Belgium. Let's save something. I didn't remember. I didn't choose the time zone. I didn't specify everything. Let's save now, eh? Understand. All done. The company is saved. We told the system this company operates in Belgium. And companies have switched to Belgium, and you'll see My Taxi. We see companies operating in Belgium. That's what divisions are for. Divisions, meaning countries, are where you provide services, called divisions in the system. How are they created? To edit or make a new division, scroll down a bit to the Zones section and enter it. In the Zones section, a map will open. In the top right corner, you'll see tools for managing the section. Click the list icon to see all pre-created countries in our system. For example, click the eye icon next to Belgium and it will highlight on the map. Click on Spain and it will highlight on the map. Click on France and it will highlight on the map. To remove the highlight, click the cross icon and it will be removed. You can also create your own. Let's create Slovakia, for example. To create a new country, add a country to the system, there's a drawing tool in the top left corner. Select it, it turns dark, and we connect the dots on the map by trial and error. I'll do it roughly just to show and explain how this feature works. I'm connecting the dots. In the end, your first and last points should meet, and the area will immediately highlight in red. Here, we've now created, or rather we've drawn the boundaries of a new division, a new country. Now let's save it. For this, we have a button with a save icon. Let's click on it. A pop-up window will appear where we can write the name of our new country, our new division. Let's call it Slovakia Test. Also, as you noticed, there's a checkbox for new medhood in this pop-up window. What's it for? Our system supports two methods for calculating order costs. So, when a client places an order, the system estimates the trip cost based on data from Google Maps, considering the route, its duration, and time, as well as the class of car the client chooses. And our system supports two types of estimation. The first type is the standard one, where the administrator sets the prices they want for different types of cars. These can be fixed prices per kilometer rates or based on trip duration with possible discounts. It also includes time-based pricing like a per-minute rate, plus special prices for trips between zones or within a specific zone. Like from Zone A to Zone B, the per kilometer rate might be one thing, but from Zone C to Zone D, it could be different, and in Zone 5, the per kilometer rate is fixed. That's the first method of cost calculation. I'll record a separate video with more details about it. The second method is when your taxi partners set their own prices, meaning they have the option in their personal account, in their taxi company account, to add their own prices, including per kilometer rates. Prices for additional services like child uwaan, seats, waiting time, disabled access, and so on. They can specify their minimum trip cost, per kilometer cost, and different per kilometer rates, depending on the trip length. For example, up to 30 kilometers is one price, over 30 kilometers is another, over 100 kilometers is a third price, and over 200 kilometers they have a completely different per kilometer rate. They can also set fixed prices for specific trips, like a trip from point A to point B has a fixed price of 100 euros, and a trip from point D to point B has a fixed price of 80 euros. They can add all this in their personal account. Separate video with description of the company prices section and how companies can add their prices, I will record and explain all this in more detail. Here, I'm just giving you a brief overview of the functionality. When the system receives a new order from users, it will evaluate the cost of this order based on the prices set by your taxi partners, other taxi companies. So these are the two methods of cost calculation. How to find out which method will be used to calculate the cost. How to determine which method will be used to calculate the cost for a trip in this new country we are creating. For this, let's go over it again. Let's call this country Slovakia TES. And here we have this option, a checkbox. It's called New Med Hood. If you set it up, the system will evaluate orders within or from this country using prices from your partner taxi companies that have added their prices to your system. On the side, these countries are marked with a small green flag labeled New. A green flag with New means that in this country, orders are evaluated using your partner's prices. This is handy when entering a new market. When you enter a new country where you've never worked, don't know the zones, or how trip prices are calculated but have trusted partners, you can ask them to add their correct prices into your system, making this country special, indicating that trip costs will be based on prices provided by your partners, and the system will work accordingly. In this case, it's very convenient. If you know this country well, have been providing services there for a long time, and want to use your own prices, then remove this check mark. Let's remove it now. Press OK. If we scroll to the end of the list, you can see our new country, Slovakia test, has been added. We can deselect it or click the eye icon to highlight it immediately. Now, after adding the country, we want to divide it into zones. What are zones? We can split the country by cities, make airports separate zones, and do the same for train stations, bus stations, tourist spots, amusement parks. Any venues for events, districts, streets, anything at all. So we can create any zones of any shape anywhere within this country, however we like. Why do we need this? So that later you can set your special prices for trips within these zones, to these zones or from these zones. If you have a fixed price across the country, like for an economy sedan, and its base price is 1.5 euros per kilometer nationwide, then you don't need zones. You can create one big zone, call it Slovakia, and the price will be 1.5 euros per kilometer throughout Slovakia. But if you have multiple zones, or say in one city the price is 1.5 euros per kilometer, and in another city it's 2 euros, and a trip from one city to an airport is a fixed 100 euros, while a trip from another airport to a tourist spot is 3 euros per kilometer. In this case, you need zones, meaning you need to divide the country into zones, and then in the car settings, you can specify which prices the system should use for trips between these zones. I'll show you this a bit later. Now, let's try to create a few test zones. We've created the Slovakia test country. And here at the top, you see another tab called Zone. Zones Fixed Prices. Let's click on it. We see that we don't have any zones yet. Let's draw one. For example, let's draw this zone and call it Zone 1. Let's draw another. We need to deselect. Now let's draw another zone, like this. Call it Zone 2. Draw a third zone. Call it Zone 3. And let's draw one more, a fourth zone, here. And call it Zone 4. Zone 4. Another thing, when you create a new airport, here in the airport section, it automatically creates a zone on the map. The system highlights the airport and saves it as a separate zone. What do we have? We have a new country called Slovakia Test, and in this country we have 4 zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, and Zone 4. Great. Let's go to this country. Select Slovakia Test from our list of divisions. Go to the Vehicle section. Vehicles. As we can see, we don't have any vehicles in this country yet. We just created it. Let's create our first vehicle. Call it Test Saloon. Say it's available. Say its base price nationwide is €1 per kilometer. And for the return trip, also €1. Say the minimum trip price nationwide is €10 and it can carry 2 passengers, 2 pieces of luggage, 2 handlers, 2 hand quads. Save, and we've added out our first vehicle. Let's go into it again. Across Slovakia Test, the base price for this test saloon is euro per kilometer. Minimum cost €10. But what if we want special prices between zones? Then we need to go to the zone-to-zone pricing section. Here we can add special prices. I say I have Zone 1. And from this Zone 1, anywhere, specifically from Zone 1, anywhere, my price per kilometer will be €2. And the return price will also be €2. And the minimum price will be €20. Also, I don't want cash payments in this zone. Save. Now it's added that from Zone 1, anywhere, these prices apply in one direction only. When you go from Zone 1 somewhere, from Zone 1 anywhere, the price per kilometer will be €2, and the minimum price will be €20. Okay, but that's not enough for me. I want to say that from Zone 2 to Zone 3 and back, meaning from Zone 2 to Zone 3 and from Zone 3 to Zone 2, I want my prices to be fixed, and the fixed price is €100. And the return trip is also €100. €100 for both there and back, so that it can't be paid with a bank card. Save. And please, from Zone 2 to Zone 3, the arrows show a fixed price of €100 both ways. Also, I want to say that from Zone 4 to Zone 1, the price per kilometer is €3. And for the return trip, it's 2 euros, and the minimum price is 40 euros. Additionally, I offer extra services: airport pickup 5 euros, disabled seating 5 euros, child seats 5 euros, ski equipment 5 euros, pet transport 5 euros, and waiting time 1 euro. I accept all payment methods, saving. And here we see that we have the country Slovakia TES. In this country, the base price is 1 euro per kilometer, but we have zones with special prices. We said that from zone 1 to anywhere, the price is 2 euros per kilometer with a minimum of 20 euros. We said that from zone 2 to zone 3, or vice versa, the fixed price is 100 euros for the trip. Also, we said that from zone 4 to zone 1, the system should calculate the trip at 3 euros per kilometer, return at 2 euros per kilometer, with a minimum of 40 euros. Saving. That's all. After this, our system will calculate all orders outside the zones at the base price of 1 euro per kilometer. But orders within these zones, created by us, will be calculated at the special prices, ignoring the base prices. Another important point. Sometimes zones overlap. For example, here, if I set boss direction and save, the system will indicate a conflict with record 4968. Here it is, 4968. Record 4968 states that from zone 1 to anywhere, the cost is 2 euros per kilometer. But here, from zone 4 to zone 1 and vice versa, the cost is 3 euros per kilometer. So, a trip from zone 1 to zone 4 conflicts with a trip from zone 1 to anywhere, as they are conflicting. Because zone 1 includes zone 4. What to do in this situation? To explain simply, let's open Paint and draw it visually for clarity. Suppose we have zone 1, and we also have zone 2, and they overlap. Let's make it green. What to do if our order falls here? Between two zones. This is like the case with zone 1 and zone 4. Here it is. This is zone 1. This is zone 2. And the order falls between two zones, each with its own special pricing settings. So, which prices should the system take? Should it take the price of zone 1 or zone 2? It doesn't know because the zones are the same, prices differ, and it doesn't know which price to take. For this, our system has a concept called priority. In this case, if two zones conflict, we can raise the priority of more specific zones. By default, all zones have priority 0. But if I set priority 1 here and save it, you see that a trip from zone 1 to zone 4 has a higher priority than a trip from zone 1 to anywhere. This means if zone 1 prices have priority 0, and specific prices for zone 2 have priority 1, the system will calculate the order between two zones at zone 2 prices, as its priority is higher. It has priority 1, and zone 1 has priority 0. This can be similar even with multiple zones. For example, you might have a third zone that overlaps like this. It will work exactly the same way in this case. So, if you have zone 3 and it has priority 2, the trip price will be evaluated at zone 3 prices. If its priority is also 0, the trip price will be evaluated at the prices of the zone with the higher priority. In this case, it's zone 2. So, in our case here, if we have such a conflicting moment, where zone 1 to anywhere is €2, but zone 1 to zone 4 is €3 with a higher priority of 1, then this trip will be evaluated at these prices. And all other trips will be evaluated at the prices from this record. I hope this is clear. I was able to explain how zone priorities work. That's basically it. I think this is enough for you to understand the principle of divisions, understand why zones are needed. We looked at how divisions are created, how new zones are created, how to save them, and what they are used for. We visualize. Tried to use these zones, newly created by us, for cost calculation, for adding specialized prices to the system, and I tried to visually explain how prioritization works and what to do if several zones overlap. Thank you all for your attention.